It started like any other rainy afternoon in Atlanta. The streets were slick with water, the sky low and gray, and the wind carried a chill that made people pull their coats tighter. At the Jefferson Avenue bus stop, Malik Jackson stood quietly, earbuds in, hands in his hoodie pocket, waiting for the 24 route to pull up. At 17, he'd already learned how to blend in, move with the rhythm of the city without drawing too much attention. A tall, lanky black teen with soft eyes and quiet manners, Malik had just finished his volunteer shift at the local community center, tutoring younger kids in math. He wasn't in a hurry, but something about the air that day made him uneasy, like the world was holding its breath. When the bus finally arrived, hissing to a stop, Malik stepped on, scanned his card, and headed to an empty seat near the middle. The bus was half full, mostly older folks, tired workers, and a few students. It was quiet, the way public spaces can be when everyone's lost in their own thoughts. Malik was about to sit when he noticed her, blonde hair damp from the rain, one hand clutching the railing, the other resting protectively on her pregnant belly. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Without thinking, Malik stood aside and offered his seat. She hesitated for a moment, clearly surprised, but then nodded, eyes full of something more than just gratitude. She didn't say much, just a soft thank you, as she sat down. Malik moved to stand by the doors, gripping the overhead rail as the bus lurched back into motion. What he didn't know was that this small gesture would ripple through his life in a way no one could have predicted. 10 rows back, a man in a long gray coat had been watching. He wore a strange silver ring, his eyes hidden beneath a hood, but Malik felt the weight of his stare. It wasn't threatening exactly, just intense, like the kind of look that digs deeper than your skin. And in that brief second when Malik met his eyes, it felt like time slipped sideways, like he was being pulled out of the moment into something far older than the city around him. The woman turned slightly in her seat, reached into her coat pocket, and slipped a folded note into Malik's hand without saying a word. Her hand brushed his, cold and trembling. She didn't look back. He didn't open the note right away. Maybe it was the man still staring at him. Or maybe it was the way her eyes lingered on the floor, like she was hiding something. All Malik knew was that his heart was beating a little faster now. When the bus reached its next stop, the man in the gray coat stood and stepped off without a glance back. The rain was heavier now, hammering the pavement in sheets. The woman watched him go, her jaw tight, her hand still pressed to her stomach. She whispered something, too soft to hear, and pulled her coat tighter around her. Malik finally looked down at the note. 5 words. You're not who you think. That's all it said. No name, no explanation. Just those words in shaky, almost frantic handwriting.
His throat went dry.
He looked back at the woman, but her eyes were closed now, had leaned against the window like she was asleep. The bus rolled on. He tried to shake it off. Maybe she was just confused, or maybe it was some kind of weird mistake. But deep down, something had changed. A crack had opened in the middle of a normal day, and now everything felt wrong. Or maybe just too real. Because while Malik stood there, heart racing, trying to understand what had just happened, thousands of miles away, in a private collection of rare texts beneath Oxford University, a very different kind of page was being turned. A forgotten letter, written in Tolkien's own hand, translated and sealed in a leather-bound book marked The Last Warnings of the West. A letter explaining that Sauron, the great enemy, the Dark Lord, was never truly defeated. Not entirely. Tolkien wrote that the One Ring was only a vessel, a door. And like all doors, it could be closed, but never truly locked. The evil it held? It wasn't just power, it was a presence, a spirit. And spirits don't die. They wait. They learn. And sometimes they change form. Malik had no idea what was coming for him. That this rainy afternoon in Atlanta was the first step in a story far older than Middle-earth and far more personal than he could imagine. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes evil finds new ways to survive, quiet, patient, hidden in plain sight. And as the bus drove farther into the gray horizon, that note still burning in his pocket, Malik didn't realize that someone, or something, was already following him. Watching. Waiting for him to remember what he really was. Because some battles aren't over. They're just beginning. Malik sat on the edge of his bed that night, the note still in his hand, unfolded and worn from being opened a dozen times. His room was quiet, just the soft hum of the streetlight outside and the faint sound of the television in the living room where his mom was half asleep on the couch. He stared at the words again. Asterisk, you're not who you think. Asterisk, they didn't make sense, and yet they felt like they were meant for him. Not random. Not accidental. He thought back to the woman's eyes, tired, scared, like someone who had seen too much and couldn't say it all out loud. And the man in the gray coat. There was something ancient in his stare, something Malik couldn't shake. Not angry, not kind, just knowing. Malik pulled open his drawer and slid the note underneath a notebook. It was probably nothing, but his gut told him otherwise. The next day, everything fell off. School dragged. People seemed distant, like the world was moving around him, but he was standing still. During history class, his teacher was going on about ancient civilizations, something about Sumerian myths and forgotten gods, but Malik kept thinking about Tolkien. He'd read The Lord of the Rings years ago, mostly out of curiosity after watching the movies. But now, pieces were coming back to him. The ring.
Sauron.
The way evil didn't just vanish, it lingered, twisted, evolved. At lunch, his friend Jalen nudged him. You good, bro? You've been zoning out like crazy. Malik forced a laugh. Yeah, just tired. He didn't mention the note. Or the woman. Or the man on the bus. It sounded insane, and he wasn't even sure what he believed himself. But all day, he kept noticing weird things. People watching him for a second too long. His phone buzzing once, but with no message. A street preacher shouting about a shadow rising on the corner near the school and stopping mid-sentence when he passed by, eyes wide, like he recognized him. That night, he couldn't sleep. The air in his room felt too still. He flipped open his laptop and typed into the search bar, Sauron never truly defeated. A bunch of fan theories popped up, forums, old blog posts, some deep Reddit threads. But buried on the third page of results was something different. A PDF from a forgotten lecture series by a Tolkien scholar, archived and rarely accessed. He clicked it open. It was titled, Asterisk, The Shadow Beyond Barad-dûr, Unfinished Warnings in Tolkien's Final Notes. Asterisk. It mentioned a recovered fragment of Tolkien's writing, never published officially, suggesting that Sauron's essence was not tied entirely to the ring. That he, like Gandalf and Saruman, was once a Maya, a spirit of great power, and that his destruction only meant a loss of form, not the end of his will. The part that made Malik's skin crawl was a single line at the bottom. Asterisk, evil, when disembodied, does not disappear. It seeks new vessels, new minds, new forms. Asterisk. His fingers trembled as he closed the laptop. It was just fantasy, right? Fiction. But it didn't feel like fiction anymore. Not when a stranger handed you a note suggesting your identity wasn't your own. Not when your dreams were suddenly filled with fire and towers and whispers in a language you didn't understand but somehow knew. The third night, Malik dreamed of a black land, a place with no stars. He stood alone in front of a massive tower, its top burning like a red eye. The wind howled with voices, and he could feel something calling to him, not in words, but in feelings.
Rage.
Hunger. Memory. He woke up soaked in sweat, heart pounding. The voice from the dream echoed in his chest. It didn't speak English, but somehow he understood it. Asterisk, you are mine. You were always mine. Asterisk. The days kept getting stranger. At the library, a book fell off the shelf near him. No one else was around. It was a worn copy of the Silmarillion, pages yellowed, spine cracked. Inside was an underlined passage about the fall of Melkor and the rise of his servant, Sauron. Another line had been written in pen beneath it. Asterisk, not all who fall stay fallen. Asterisk. Malik stepped back, heart hammering. None of this could be coincidence. He grabbed the book and checked it out, not even sure why. It felt like a map, something left behind to guide him. But to where? And why him? He didn't feel powerful. He wasn't some chosen one. He was just a kid who helped his mom with groceries and tried to stay out of trouble. But the more he tried to ignore it, the more the signs found him. Like the raven that landed outside his window 3 mornings in a row. Or the flicker of shadows where there should be none. Or the strange moment in science class when the lights blinked and his teacher stared at him like he was seeing someone else for a split second. Things escalated when he finally saw the man in the gray coat again. This time, in the alley behind the corner store. Malik had just grabbed a bottle of water when he spotted him, standing perfectly still near a dumpster, eyes locked on him. "You need to know the truth," the man said softly. Malik froze. "What are you talking about?" The man stepped closer, voice low and even. "You're not what you seem." That note wasn't a warning. It was a reminder. Malik took a step back, but the man didn't follow. "There are others like you, but you're the first to wake up. The others will come, and so will it." It. The man nodded slowly. "The shadow that never died. It's already looking for you. It's always been looking." "Why me?" Malik asked. The man paused. "Because you carry a piece of it, whether you want to or not." A car honked from the street, and when Malik turned his head for a second, the man was gone. That night, Malik didn't sleep. He didn't even lie down. He sat at his desk, lights off, the note beside him. The words burned into his mind. "You're not who you think." He didn't know what that meant yet. But deep down, he was beginning to feel it. Like something was buried inside him, waiting to be remembered. The dreams kept coming. The voices were louder. The eye was closer. And in the darkness between the dreams, he saw a shadow walking, slowly, steadily, getting closer with every night. It wasn't over. It had only just begun. The following week felt like Malik was living someone else's life. On the outside, nothing had changed. He still walked to school, did his homework, helped his mom when she got home from her long shift at the nursing home. But inside, he was unraveling. Every moment felt charged with this invisible pressure, like something heavy was sitting just behind his eyes, watching from the dark. He hadn't told anyone, not even Jalen. Not yet. Who would believe him anyway? That a pregnant woman on a rainy day had handed him a note that shook his entire sense of reality? That he kept seeing a strange man who vanished into shadows and whispered about pieces and waking up? But the worst part wasn't the dreams or the shadows anymore. It was the changes. He started noticing things small at first. He could hear conversations from farther away than he should. He could see things moving faster than they were. One afternoon, during basketball practice, he caught a ball midair without realizing it was even thrown at him. Everyone stared. Coach just laughed it off, but Malik felt his stomach twist. It didn't feel like reflexes. It felt like instinct, like he was reacting before the world even moved. And then came the fire. It happened on a Wednesday just before dinner. His mom had stepped out to grab milk. Malik was in the kitchen, staring at the gas burner flame. It flickered like normal at first, blue and steady. But then, as he zoned out, thinking about the dream from the night before, the tower, the eye, the whisper, it turned orange. Then deep red. Then black. And it wasn't just fire anymore. It was alive. He jerked back, gasping, and the flames snapped back to normal. He didn't sleep that night. Somewhere deep in the city, someone else was also awake. The man in the gray coat stood inside a dim library filled with strange books. He moved slowly, pulling an ancient text from the shelf, one bound in dark leather, lined with silver elvish script. Inside was a single page folded into the binding, written in a hurried scrawl. Asterisk, the vessel awakens. He does not know yet, but the shadow will find him soon. The signs have begun. Asterisk. Back in Malik's world, things were falling apart slowly. He started seeing glimpses of people who weren't there, shapes out of the corner of his eye, figures and reflections that vanished when he turned. He would hear whispers coming from nowhere, sometimes saying his name, other times something else. Anatar. That word kept repeating. In dreams, in shadows, in passing murmurs on the bus. He finally searched it one night. The results made him feel sick. Anatar. The name Sauron once used, before he showed his true face. The name he used to deceive.
To teach.
To win trust. Malik stared at the screen, his heart pounding. What did it mean? Was someone calling him that? Or, worse, were they mistaking him for someone else? At school, he tried to keep it together, but even his teachers noticed. Ms. Carver pulled him aside after English. You okay, Malik? You seem distracted lately. He wanted to tell her.
He almost did.
But the words stuck. I'm fine, he said. Just tired. At home, his mom began asking too. You not eating right? You look pale. You getting sick?
No, Ma.
Just stressed. But the truth was, he felt like he was splitting into two people. One still grounded in this world, school, family, friends. The other slowly remembering something else. A world of towers and rings, of whispers and fire. The pressure in his chest grew each day. He didn't know what to do with it. He needed answers. That's when he went back to the bus stop. Same time, same route. Hoping to see her, the pregnant woman. He waited 2 days. Nothing. On the third, she was there. She looked worse than before, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her hair was pulled back, her coat the same. When he approached, she didn't look surprised. She almost looked like she'd been expecting him. You came, she whispered. What did your note mean? Malik asked. She didn't answer at first. Then slowly she said, they'll come for you soon. If they haven't already.
Who?
What do you mean? She shook her head. I shouldn't have told you. But I couldn't let you walk away not knowing. Not when I saw what's inside you. Malik's voice cracked. What's inside me? She looked up at him then, eyes full of sadness.
A spark.
Of something very old, very dangerous. Before he could speak, she turned and got on the bus, leaving him standing there in the drizzle. Later that night, Malik found his bedroom window cracked open. He was sure he'd locked it. A note sat on his desk. No name, no writing, just a symbol, an eye drawn in ash. That night, the dream was different. He wasn't just standing in front of the tower anymore. He was inside it, looking down, watching armies move, hearing whispers in his ear like wind. One whisper stood out. You cannot run from yourself. He woke up screaming. The next day, the mirror in his bathroom cracked when he touched it. No explanation. No pressure. Just cracked. Something was coming. Something buried in stories, hidden in legends, wrapped in Tolkien's words but meant for more than fiction. Malik could feel it waking. In him. Around him. And the scariest part? He wasn't sure if he was running from it or being called back to it. The days blurred into each other after that. Malik couldn't tell if he was losing his grip or finally waking up. The dreams grew louder. The voices no longer whispered, they shouted, overlapping in strange tongues he understood without learning. His hands would sometimes tremble, not from fear, but from heat, like something inside him wanted out. He stopped going to school after the fire alarm incident. He had meant to cause it. He'd just gotten angry briefly when another student shoved him in the hallway. But in that moment, every light in the hallway flickered. The fire alarm blared without cause, and smoke, not from flames, but from nothing, rose from the ceiling. The hallway emptied in panic. No one saw him standing still in the middle of it, terrified of himself. When he got home that day, the lights in the apartment buzzed when he walked through the door. His mom tried to talk to him again, worry in her eyes, but he could barely look at her. He didn't want her anywhere near him. That night, the dreams returned harder. But this time, he wasn't alone. He stood on a black plain, beneath a blood-red sky. In front of him were 9 tall figures cloaked in shadow. Behind them, a throne of jagged stone. Fire burned in the cracks of the earth. One of the cloaked figures stepped forward. Malik recognized the voice. It was the same man from the bus. You're almost at the edge, he said. One more step, and it begins. Malik looked down at his hands. They were glowing faintly, golden red veins pulsing beneath his skin. What am I? He asked. The man didn't answer, but the throne behind him shuddered. Something was waking. You were born with a spark of it, the man finally said. Buried deep. It passed through fire, through story, through time. You are its last vessel. Sauron, Malik asked, barely able to say the name. No, the man said quietly. Not Sauron. What came before him? What created him? Malik woke up gasping, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break. The note was gone. The ash drawing on his desk had changed, morphed into a circle, with lines running outward, like rays. The next morning his phone buzzed. Unknown number. I can help. But not for long. Meet me at the church on Edgewater. Don't bring anyone. Asterisk asterisk. He didn't hesitate. He couldn't. Something inside him felt like it was collapsing. The church was abandoned, its stained glass shattered, its wooden pews rotting. The place smelled of dust and mold and time. He stepped inside, and for a second, he thought he was alone. Then he saw her, the pregnant woman, standing in the aisle, hands resting on her belly, face pale. I wasn't supposed to come back here, she said softly. But you're close now. And they're closing in. Who are you? Malik asked. I was once like you. Marked. She looked down at her belly, then back up. This world isn't what you think. And neither are you. They wrote it all down, Tolkien others, but they called it fantasy. It was safer that way. Why me? Malik asked again. I didn't choose this.
No, she said.
But something did. The spark inside you. Sauron was just one who carried it. Before him, others. And before them, something older still. It doesn't die. It moves. From voice to voice. Vessel to vessel. Malik stepped back, shaking. I don't want it. I just want to be normal. You can't, she said simply. Not anymore. And you don't have much time. The Watchers are moving. She turned toward the altar. There's a book hidden beneath here. It's written in a language only you can read now. Take it. It's your last chance to choose what kind of vessel you want to be. As she knelt, a sound ripped through the air, like metal tearing. The stained glass above shattered inward, and a shadow swept through the room like smoke with teeth. Malik grabbed the book. The woman screamed. The light went out, and everything turned to fire. The fire didn't burn like normal fire. It didn't crackle. It whispered. It whispered in languages Malik had never learned, yet somehow knew. Voices layered on top of each other, chanting, echoing through the dark like echoes from a forgotten time. He held the book tightly against his chest as the smoke spiraled upward, not choking, but pulling, like it wanted to take something from him. The pregnant woman was gone. No trace, no scream, just vanished like she had never been there at all. The only thing left behind was her coat, resting gently on the church pew like it had been folded by unseen hands. Malik's legs shook as he stepped backward toward the door, but the shadows moved faster. They circled the altar, not solid, not liquid, just presence. A presence that knew his name now, that had been watching him longer than he realized. He could feel it in the air like heat before a storm. The church trembled, and just before the roof began to give in, he ran. Outside, the city didn't seem to notice that something impossible had just happened. Cars rolled by. Horns honked. Rain started to fall again, steady and soft, as if trying to wipe away whatever had just taken place inside. Malik stood in the alley behind the church, heart pounding, his hands shaking so bad he almost dropped the book. Its cover felt warm. Too warm. As if it were alive. He made it home just after sunset, soaked and silent. His mom didn't ask where he'd been this time. She was on the phone, pacing, frustrated, talking about someone breaking into the nursing home and stealing security tapes. It didn't click until she said, "They only took the footage from last week, the day I brought Malik lunch." He froze. Someone had been following him long enough to erase evidence. Whoever or whatever they weren't just watching. They were tracking. Covering their steps. Hiding something. Or worse, hiding him. He locked his bedroom door, pulled the curtains, and set the book down on the desk. It opened by itself. Not from the middle, but near the back. Its pages didn't hold words the way he expected. They shimmered. Symbols floated on the surface like they were carved in smoke. But as he stared, They shifted, became lines he could read. And the first sentence made his stomach turn. Asterisk, the last vessel of the flame will come through shadow, born of both light and lie. Asterisk. He felt like the air had been punched out of him. The book was describing him. Another line appeared beneath it. Asterisk, to destroy it is to destroy yourself. To embrace it is to forget who you were. Asterisk. That was the choice. That was what this was all building to. But just as the room fell into silence, a knock came at his window.
Slow.
Measured. He turned, half hoping it was just wind or a loose branch, but when he looked outside, his chest locked up. It was Jalen. Only it wasn't really Jalen. His face was the same hoodie, same nervous eyes, but there was something off in the way he stood.
Too still.
Like he wasn't breathing. Like something had stepped into his skin and hadn't figured out how to move right. Malik opened the window an inch. You good? Jalen tilted his head. You haven't been answering your phone. His voice was off. Slightly delayed, like it was being played back from a recording. I've been busy, Malik said, gripping the edge of his desk. Why are you at my window? Jalen smiled. But it wasn't Jalen's smile. It was wider, stretched, hollow. You should have read the book sooner. Malik slammed the window shut. He backed away as Jalen stared through the glass without blinking. No fog from his breath. No sign of life. And then he disappeared. Not turned to run. Not walked away. Just gone. Malik's hands were shaking again, and this time it wasn't just fear, it was heat, rising from beneath his skin. His reflection in the mirror across the room flickered. For a second, it wasn't his face. It was someone older. Someone colder. Someone burned. He dropped the book and stumbled back, gasping. Then his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You are not alone. But they have taken the first. Asterisk, asterisk. Malik's mind raced. The first? Who? The pregnant woman? Another vessel? He didn't have time to think. The shadows were closing in again. Not in dreams. Not in symbols. But in the real world now. The streets had begun to darken earlier than usual. Streetlights flickered even when there was no wind. Animals were vanishing. People he used to see every day at the corner store, gone. No explanation. No warning. He needed help, but he didn't know who he could trust. Not even Jalen. Especially not Jalen. The second twist came when he opened the last page of the book. A small photo had been tucked into the binding. A black and white image. Old. Faded. His mother. Holding him as a baby. Standing beside a man in a long gray coat. The same one from the bus. Only this time, the man's face was clear. And it was his own face. Older. Tired. But unmistakably him. Malik dropped the photo. The air grew thick. Time slowed. He wasn't just being followed. He was being pulled. Not just into darkness, but into himself. And the shadow had always known. Because it had been waiting. Not for him to fall, but to return. Malik didn't remember leaving his room. One minute he was staring at the photo, the one with his baby self, his mother, and the man who looked exactly like him, and the next he was standing in the middle of the street, barefoot, clutching the book, his breath fogging in the strange cold air. The city was quiet in a way that felt wrong, like sound had been sucked out of the world. No traffic. No dogs barking. Just silence and streetlights blinking like tired eyes. He walked, guided by something he couldn't name. Not a voice, not a thought, but a pull. A deep ache behind his ribs that told him where to go without saying it out loud. Each step felt heavier, like the ground itself didn't want him to keep going. But he did, because he had to know. Who was the man in the photo? Was it really him? And if so, when? The pull led him to the park near Jefferson Street. The one where the community center sat across the road. Only now it didn't look like a park. It looked like something had broken through it. The trees were dying. The grass was black. And in the center of it all, standing beneath a cracked lamp, was the man in the gray coat. He turned as Malik approached, his face clear now in the dim light. It was him. Older.
Scarred.
Eyes filled with something between regret and warning. You weren't supposed to remember this soon, the man said. What is this? Malik asked, his voice hoarse. Who are you? I'm you, the man said. Or what you become, if you choose the fire. Malik clenched the book tighter. The fire? The spark inside you, the man said. It's not just power. It's a memory of something that lived through Sauron, through the First Age, even before. A piece of a fallen power that never truly died. Tolkien didn't invent it. He translated it. We've all just been pretending it was fiction. But why me? Malik asked. I didn't ask for this. No one does, the man replied. But the shadow picks its vessels. You carry it. You've always carried it. But now you're strong enough to choose what to do with it. Malik looked around. The shadows were creeping again, pulling across the sidewalk, moving in toward him, waiting. Always waiting. If I let it in, he said, what happens? You become what I did, the older Malik said, his voice cracking. Powerful. Untouchable. But hollow. The shadow doesn't just use you. It becomes you. And if I fight it? The older Malik looked away. You burn it out. But it burns you, too. For a long moment, Malik said nothing. Then, he opened the book again, right to the page with the glowing script. The words twisted as he read them, and a circle of heat rose around him. The shadows hissed but didn't move closer. From the corner of the park, someone stepped forward. It was the pregnant woman. No coat. No fear in her eyes this time. You're stronger than the last one, she said softly. Stronger than even he was. Malik looked at the older version of himself. Why show me this? Why warn me? Because I remember the moment I didn't choose, the man said. And I wanted to see just once what would happen if I did. And then he stepped into the fire. Malik shouted, but it was too late. The older version of himself walked into the center of the circle, and the flames took him in silence. No scream, no struggle, just light. The book pulsed. The voices screamed one last time. And then Malik saw it. The truth. He wasn't the first.
He was the last.
The shadow hadn't been trying to destroy him. It had been trying to return to him, because Malik wasn't just a new vessel. He was the original. The first form. The forgotten spark that became all the rest. Not a victim of the shadow, but its source. The final twist wasn't that he carried evil. It was that he created it. Long ago. Before names. Before time. And now he remembered everything. He dropped the book. The park was silent again. And Malik stood alone, not afraid, not confused, just aware. He wasn't the hero of the story. He was the beginning of it. The fire faded slowly, leaving only warmth in the air and the faint scent of ash. The park was still. No more shadows crawling. No voices in the wind. Malik stood in the middle of it all, the book at his feet, closed and quiet, like it had never spoken. Around him, the world hadn't changed, not visibly. The streetlights still flickered. A distant dog barked. Somewhere, someone laughed. But inside him, something had shifted forever. He didn't feel powerful. Not anymore. He just felt aware. Like all the noise that had been rising inside him was now still, like a storm that had passed. The memory of who he really was lingered, not in clear images, but in emotion. He didn't see his former self sitting on a throne or commanding armies. It wasn't that simple. It was more like feeling the weight of time in his bones. The echo of every life touched by that original spark. The fear. The fire. The fall. He looked at the space where his older self had vanished. There was no trace left behind. No ash, no mark. Just an empty space where a man had chosen to end his own cycle, hoping someone would make a better choice. Malik couldn't promise he would. But he could try. And maybe that was enough. The woman, the one who had first handed him the note, was still standing at the edge of the grass. Her arms wrapped around her belly, eyes soft but unreadable. He walked to her slowly. You knew, he said quietly. She nodded. I saw it when I looked at you. Most people can't. But I was trained to. Trained? She gave a faint smile. There are still people in the world who protect the old knowledge. Tolkien was one of them. So, was the man in the coat your future self? We all keep watch for the spark, hoping it never fully wakes, hoping someone will finally make a different choice. And if I hadn't, he asked. She looked up at him, serious now. Then the shadow would have spread again. Slowly. In whispers. Through influence. Through fear. Just like it always has. Malik felt the truth of that settle in his chest.
He had seen it.
In the dreams. In the silence of his own thoughts. The temptation wasn't just about power. It was about control. About never being afraid again. Never being helpless. But with that came something else, loneliness. Emptiness. Because to carry that kind of darkness meant giving up the light in yourself. So what happens now? He asked. You move forward, she said simply. You live. You remember who you were, but you choose who you'll be. That's your power now. He glanced at the book on the ground. Should I destroy it? No, she said. Let it sleep. It only speaks when it senses the flame. If you walk away from it, it'll stay quiet. He bent down and picked it up carefully. This time it felt cool in his hands. Almost like any other book. Still, he slipped it into his backpack and zipped it shut. The woman turned to leave, but paused. He really did love you, you know. The version of you that came back to warn you. He gave up everything to break the cycle. I know, Malik said softly. I saw it in his eyes. She nodded once, then walked away into the fog, disappearing between the trees as if she had never been there at all. Malik walked home under the dull light of street lamps, feeling the weight of the past, but also something lighter.
Possibility. He still had a life to live.
A mom to care for. Friends who didn't know any of this, and probably never would. Maybe that was a gift. To keep something so ancient inside and still find a way to smile, to wake up, to be normal in all the small ways that mattered. When he got home, the apartment was dark except for the TV flickering. His mom had fallen asleep on the couch again, still in her scrubs. He pulled a blanket over her, careful not to wake her, and stood for a moment just watching her breathe. He went into his room and placed the book on the shelf behind his old school trophies. He didn't lock it up. He didn't need to. He knew now that real danger didn't come from objects. It came from choices. From forgetting who you were and giving in to the silence. In the weeks that followed, Malik felt the shift, not as power, but as perspective. The fire no longer burned, but its memory stayed. He started talking again. To Jalen. To Ms. Carver. Even to his mom, when she had a quiet moment. Life didn't go back to normal, but it moved forward. And that was enough. He never saw the man in the gray coat again. He never heard the voices in his dreams. But sometimes, when he passed the park, he'd see the lamp still flickering. And in that moment, he'd remember who he was. And who he could have been. In the end, the story wasn't about darkness. Or even about power.
It was about choice.
About how the smallest decision, a seat on a bus, a note in a hand, could open the door to something far bigger than one life. And how that same life, grounded in kindness and humanity, could be strong enough to close it again. The shadow wasn't gone. It never truly would be. But for now, it was quiet. And Malik had found the light again.